Howdy, y'all. All right, my timekeeper says it's time to go. If I can get the presenter up here. He's coming. David Harvey, network planning from the best little airline in the world. He told me to say that. He said he's a guest, so I had to do what he said. Southwest Airlines, he's also a UTD graduate. That's another plus for him. So we're very happy to have him to talk about Southwest Airlines and Randy's glorious plan they have going on to all barriers that people remove from their operation. And I started flying them about the year they started. And they can only go from Texas to the next state. Everybody had to get off the drum of the airplane. And they're about to open up a whole new world of opportunities.
Yes. I did want to take just a minute to thank both Jims from UT Dallas. So this is 8th year, going strong, growing every year. So really neat symposium. I think I can probably speak for everybody in this room that every once in a while, we need a little bit of time out of the office, kind of heads up time, and just connect, do some networking, and get some little tips of the trade and share, and it's always always very beneficial. So also wanted to thank David from PM World Journal, and also wanted to thank Larry from the local Dallas PMI chapter here in the rest of the leadership team. There he is. I saw him in the hallway. So thank you guys for everything you do to bring this together and make this whole event happen. So quick round of applause. So one thing before we jump in, would really like to make the next hour or so more of a conversation. Hopefully I'm not just up here kind of talking head. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to, you've either heard about Southwest Airlines, most folks being local, had a chance to fly us. Just show of hands, how many folks have flown Southwest Airlines in the room? Thank you very much. How many, one more here, yeah, how many folks, if I asked you to pull out your wallet, you'd have a Rapid Rewards card in your wallet? Thank you very much, and hopefully I will throw in a few shameless plugs, because we've got some exciting stuff coming up here this fall with Dallas Love Field and a bunch of new flying, but hopefully if we haven't had a chance to welcome you to Try Southwest, you'll do that in the not too distant future. So let me share a little bit of my background and my allegiances. You can see here my pride and joy, my 4 little boys here. I've got essentially 10, 8, 6, and 4. You can see the guy on the far left, that's Isaac. He still needs a little bit of work on doing the horns there. This is an annual beach trip, so we go down to Port Aransas every Labor Day, the last 7 or 8 years, and it's a bunch of Longhorn families, and there's 40 kids, 10 and under, so we just kind of take over our section of the beach. So we'll be down there in a couple weeks. I started with Southwest Airlines in 1999, so going on year 16, and had kind of a colorful, it's one of the things at Southwest, it's really about going where you grow. So they're big on hiring for your character and your attitude, and they'll give you the skills and the training and the on-the-job experience as you go, and you can kind of move into different arenas. And that's not always the case. They can't just throw me into a cockpit and have me go throw a plane. So there are some boundaries to that. But spent my first 8.5 years in technology, then moved over. And we'll get into this here in just a bit as we start talking about planning at Southwest Airlines. We actually didn't have a corporate planning group, a strategic planning group until the mid-2000s, so 2006, 2007 time frame. Last few years I've been very focused on commercial and commercial planning, and then most recently, the last year, moved over to what we call network planning, focused on actual capacity. So we have about 700 planes responsible for determining where we actually deploy the aircraft every single day. So a lot of fun, very, very vibrant business. So a few quotes, I think, to help kind of filter the conversation as we think about this. Herb Kelleher, who hopefully, or maybe a lot of folks that have been in the Dallas area have heard of, very, very much charismatic, kind of maverick founder of Southwest Airlines. One of the things that he would always say to us is in life, the most prepared almost always wins. So much that we talk about, whether it's business planning, whether it's strategy, whether it's PMO practices, it's all about preparedness. Practice makes perfect. And just making sure that you are in the best spot possible to win the game at the end of the day. And then speaking of games, Yogi Berra, one of his yogiisms, catcher and outfielder for 19 years for the Yankees, amazing, won 13 world championships, probably one of the most quoted folks in all of baseball, maybe most quoted folks in all of America. But he said, if you don't know where you're going, you're certain to end up somewhere else. So hopefully we can all take that as a good adage, that we don't want to end up somewhere else. We want to know where we're going at the end of the day. So we're going to talk a very quick business update because a lot of the planning is actually bearing fruit right before our eyes. So we want to note on a few things and where Southwest Airlines sits today. Spend a little bit of time talking about an executive effort we went through to really kind of get grounded on what our purpose and vision. You'd say, hey, very successful company, why do you do this? Well, it's something that has really helped us kind of catapult our planning for the next 10 years. We have put a lot of process and invested in the right methodologies and governance, kind of 3 PM practices. So we want to talk about what that looks like at Southwest. And then because we are here in the heart of Dallas, and our crown jewel, Love Field, coming online with the long-haul, non-stop flights here on October 13th. Wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about Love Field. So a little bit of history, but also talking about all the airport planning, all the commercial planning, all the technology. It touches just about everything we do at Southwest. So quick history. You may have heard of the cocktail napkin. So the same Herb Kelleher that I talked about earlier. If you can literally imagine a lawyer down in San Antonio law offices, let's go across the street to their favorite pub. A few wild turkeys later, and then it's the cocktail napkin story. So an idea was born, and they said, Herb, Roland King said, Herb, you're crazy, let's do it. And it was really about the airplane competing with the car. They thought that they could have clearly a better product, faster. Point A to point B, and actually from a cost and a fare perspective, can do it cheaper than a gallon of gas or a tank of gas going from Dallas to Houston to San Antonio. So the airline was born. It was an interesting time. It was pre-deregulation. You had the juggernauts that were American and Braniff at the time. Braniff, of course, long gone. So it was an interesting time, and also at the time you had. The stat's amazing. So 98% of people that had traveled in 1970 were only 98% of the U.S. population had not flown. It was essentially dominated by business, and it was also essentially dominated by males. And now that has completely switched. So 95% of Americans today have actually flown. And this is, Southwest being the leader in the low cost, low fare industry. We really feel like there was a lot in this business model that really democratized the skies. So beginning with just the 3 cities, today we're actually the largest in terms of domestic passengers. We carry 125 million passengers annually, so 1 in 4 people that fly today actually fly on Southwest Airlines, larger than any of the legacies, so Delta, United, and the new Americans. So 700 aircraft, 3,600 flights a day, and over 125 million passengers. Grew from the 3 to now 93 cities in 41 states, Puerto Rico, and now we have 6 international countries. We'll talk here in a moment about the AirTran acquisition, a huge piece of our planning puzzle the last few years, and integrating them and fully converting them into the Southwest brand. Profitable for 41 consecutive years, absolutely unparalleled in the airline industry, even in the aughts. So 2000 to 2010, through 9/11, 3 major recessions, Southwest was able to scratch out profits. Actually, we're approaching $18 billion this year. Just a few other quick stats. The lowest number of customer complaints since the DOT, the Department of Transportation, started collecting those stats in '87. Also proud of the only airline that's never had a layoff. So in all those years, and it's a little bit of a misnomer. Folks think, hey, well, you've got a healthy accord with your frontline labor groups. Oh, you must not be unionized. Actually, we are the most heavily unionized in the U.S. industry, so about 90% of our employees are under one of the 10 collective bargaining agreements, and we've got 46,000 employees where we sit today. So state of the business, we just had, 3 weeks ago, we just had our second quarter earnings, and it was the best earnings in the history of the airline. So we did $485 million in net income and actually generated $5 billion in revenue in the second quarter alone. We are actually going on a streak of 5 straight quarters dating back to last year that have all been nominal record profits. And you're starting to see that in key measures. You see the bullet point down there in a moment. Actually was kind of checking because we are literally at an all-time high stock price. We almost hit $30 per share this week. So very, very excited about that. Something from a financial metric, we really look at our return on invested capital base. So our standard, especially back in the 80s and 90s, we far exceeded a 15% return on that invested capital. The last time we'd actually hit it was in 2000. We would have hit it in 2001 if it hadn't been for 9/11. And then it's been a tough road ahead. It's been about 13 years since we've hit that target. And it was just 3 weeks ago where we were able to say to Wall Street, we now have trailing 12 months of 15+% ROIC. We're actually at 17.1. The course that we're on, we should shatter 15% for the full year 2014. And our CEO and our CFO, that gives them the ability to go out to the street and to the institutional investors and talk about Southwest kicking it back into growth mode. Very strong balance sheet, high liquidity and cash flows. Back in May, our board of directors actually doubled the dividend and authorized $1 billion share repurchase program. So that's great tools to continue to drive performance. And then on top of that, just a couple weeks ago, by hitting that 17.1, Gary Kelly, our current CEO, gave a $200 cash award, just kind of thank you, a love note to all 46,000 employees, just to thank them for everything they're doing. So the colorful history, and I would just say the future is just even brighter from here. So very, very, very excited about what we're about to get into here. A few key milestones. So I've hinted at the AirTran acquisition. So they had 7 international destinations. Southwest branded metal, so our planes on July 1st, so just a little over a month and a half ago, actually took our maiden international flight. Couldn't be more excited. That was one of the key purposes for actually acquiring AirTran. And by the end of this year, the entire AirTran brand will be converted into Southwest, and all of those international destinations are going to be under the Southwest umbrella. And we publicly said that there are 50+ destinations of growth with the 125 million great customers we have here domestically, a lot of pent-up demand to not only look at places like Caribbean, Mexico, Central America. Our birds can go to the Northern Rim, South America, look at Canada, look at Hawaii, Alaska. So there's a lot of rich opportunity out there that we're going to be pursuing here. Very excited. So 10 years ago, if I was standing up here, anyone from Southwest, there'd be a couple airports that we would say we were never going to fly to these airports. 2 of them are right here. So one is New York LaGuardia, and then D.C. Washington Reagan. And we're very excited about the acquisition of a lot of the slots, those assets. And now by the end of this year, we're going to be 3rd in seat share in a key market, of course, being New York, one of the busiest air travel markets in the world, and then also will be 2nd in D.C. So if you think about going into the heart of the district and taking a lot of our passengers there, whether that's for business or leisure, very, very excited about that. Full repeal of Dallas Ride Amendment here on October 13th, so we're counting on the date. We'll talk a lot more about this in a moment, but we fly to 16 nonstop destinations today, just fly intra-Texas and then adjoining states. There's a few exceptions like Kansas City and St. Louis, but beyond that, so 16 is the number today, and here in 2015, you're going to find yourself able to fly to over 40 nonstop destinations everywhere you would imagine, coast to coast, nonstop basis, very convenient, right out of left field, so couldn't be more thrilled about that. We have our Houston International Terminal and Gateway. It's going to be a major international gateway for us, opening up in the 4th quarter of 2015. So for folks here that live in Dallas, quick 45-minute flight down to Dallas, change planes, and we're going to have somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 15 international nonstops out of Houston Hobby. So that's a 5-gate project, and we'll have exclusive use of 4 of the 5 gates down there in Harvey. And one last quick milestone, very, very proud. So Fortune, this just came out in the last month or two, named to the 2014 list of the 20 consecutive years to one of the world's most admired companies, and only commercial airline in the top 10. So a lot is cooking. So we're going to transition here in a little bit, start talking about all the planning it took to make some of this happen. So before I move on, so that's a lot. I just love to just pause for a moment and see if folks had any questions about some of the history we went through with Southwest, some of the current kind of state of the business, or some of those milestones. Yes, sir.
Other than politics, what was the reason for Southwest being limited on where they could fly out of Love Field to destinations?
Yeah, so if you think back to the early 70s, mid-70s, DFW was coming online. So there was a big emphasis, that's a shared entity across both Dallas and Fort Worth. So there was a big drive to move all of the airlines. So actually Fort Worth had a couple kind of regional airports, Dallas Love Field. The original design was Dallas Love Field was going to go away. It was going to be residential, and retail, pretty close into the heart of downtown. It's valuable property. Huge tussle, huge fight, and at the end of the day, City of Dallas and Southwest was one of the loudest voices with that. So we want to continue to remain our primary service out of Love Field. We were tiny. We only flew inter-Texas. We're going to let American Delta, Brant, all those guys go out to DFW. So there actually was a senator over in Fort Worth, a gentleman by the name of Senator Jim Wright, i.e. the Wright Amendment. And through a lot of regulatory and legislation, they applied the Wright Amendment. And it is Southwest for multiple decades. We used the term internally. We were passionately neutral. We did not. It was kind of Switzerland. We really didn't. It was good, kind of straddling the fence and not having a say. And it was really, we saw just a few things broke, and kind of a little bit after 2000, we kind of changed our stance from passionately neutral that the Wright Amendment was absolutely ridiculous, anti-competitive. So we really kind of cranked up the focus on getting it repealed. It was back in 2007, a 5-party agreement between the City of Dallas, City of Fort Worth, that's called the Friends of Love Field, the folks that live in that community right around Love Field, and then American Airlines and Southwest Airlines. Those are the 5 parties in the agreement. Finally came to an accord that is going to be the Wright Amendment. So it's been since 2007, since it's been a kind of slow burn, and we've been planning ever since for all the fanfare that's about to take place here in just 2 months away. So a little bit of the background. Does that help with the question?
Yeah, just one quick follow-up.
Yes, sir.
There's no air traffic control issues or anything that were in play, or is it just it's a non-issue that 2 airports being so close together?
No, there's nothing about air traffic control. I mean, there's a lot of big cities that have what are called curfews, so they don't want you taking off too early or landing too late. But you have real dense airport systems. Like think about places like New York with 4 major airports. Think about Chicago. Think about the LA Basin. Even Houston between Harvey and Intercontinental, and Dallas between DFW. I think Dallas and Dallas Love Field and DFW sit 18 miles apart. So there's definitely congestion with two large operations. But air traffic control was not a bottleneck with the full decision. There were a few kind of to get the deal done, and you can just imagine just all the back and forth and behind closed doors. But Love Field is capped at 20 gates, so we have 16 of the 20 gates. The other 2, American just had to divest. You may have seen some things in the paper over the last few months. So that was divested to Virgin America, who will be starting here in a couple months as well. And then United are the current holders of the other two gates. For the total of 20 gates, and we'll never be able to do international. That is a restriction out of Love Field. But anywhere in the United States, which would include nonstop to Hawaii if somebody wanted to do that, or even Alaska, but nothing beyond the border. I thought I saw another hand. Yes, sir.
Hello. I'd just like to say I flew to Southwest getting here, and you guys did not lose my luggage. Thank you. I have had nothing but the best luck flying with you guys. Highly recommend. Now, when they say in business school over and over again, I don't know if it's a social rumor or if it's true, but they keep on telling us one of the competitive advantages of Southwest Airlines is that you guys have identical airplanes. For example, one plane breaks down and another plane part, just don't need it right then, just pop it right in. So assuming that's true for a moment, you'll have to clarify if that's true or not, how does that impact the overall capital investment when it goes to buy a new fleet? In other words, it sounds to me like you have to buy a new fleet all at once.
So a little bit of clarity there. So we are an all Boeing 737 company. With the AirTran acquisition, we did actually acquire 88 of the 717s, an old McDonnell Douglas product that actually Boeing bought out. We actually are, as part of one of our big strategic initiatives, fleet modernization, we're actually did a deal with Delta to sublease the entire fleet of the 717s. So that said, our entire 700 planes are all 737s, -7s, or -8s, and all the -8 is essentially a stretch of it's 175 seats versus 143 seats is the makeup, but the parts are 98% the same. The cockpit is identical, so all of our pilots and very seamless for our flight attendants as well are very much plug and play. So if you do have a mechanical, something out of service, you just have congestion and need to call another aircraft up, we have virtual and hard spares available to try to help relieve some of the operational pinch points. It is very much, it's very much a simple model so that we can run a very efficient operation. Thank you.
Yeah, one quick question over here. Give me the mic.
Yes,
On your international plans, is it just mostly going to South America from Houston? Or are you thinking Europe from other places, or they don't really know your whole long-range plan yet?
So with these 50 destinations, I would say these 50 destinations that I talked about are essentially, and the focus of that is North America, with a little bit of Central America and just a touch of South America. So nothing in that number is considering Asia Pacific or across the pond over to Europe at this point. One of our big strategic initiatives I'll flash here in just a moment is a brand new reservation system that allows us a lot more flexibility for partnerships and alliances. There's nothing concrete, but we would look at doing some sort of partnership to go into some of those longer range international destinations, I'd say over the next 5 to 10 years. We have, on the order of magnitude, a couple hundred aircraft worth of growth just with this -7 and -8, our current fleet footprint to grow. So it's one of those classic decisions. Do you try to you go after different lines of business? In this case, would you bring in a larger gauge or different fleet type to go do longer range missions, or you just go with what's working really well and just do that better than anyone else and just keep making strong money? Yes, ma'am.
To what do you attribute not having to take government assistance?
Are you talking about the bailouts in the early 2000s? It's autonomy and kind of a little bit more, I say this word as humbly as I can, control your own destiny, because there's a lot of things outside of your control with regulatory. You think about the fuel spike, so back in 08, 09, when a barrel of fuel went up to $149 a barrel. There's no airline out there that's built for that. Thankfully, we had a really strong hedge position, fuel hedge portfolio. It'd be interesting to see if you kind of look back, hindsight's 2020, what the government would say about, hey, should we bailed out? It was too big to fail, too many jobs were on the line. The overall airline business is too critical. The transportation it's almost infrastructure for the entire United States to kind of get us back out of the recession. I do think you're seeing a lot of health in the industry today. If we had not made those decisions, we being all of us as U.S. citizens, and maybe let a couple of those airlines fail, it's such a competitive, ever-changing industry. Capacity would have been backfilled. The whole consolidation in the whole industry just would have happened faster. So it's kind of off the record, if you will. I know it's being videotaped, but my 2 cents is it would have actually expedited the help that we're finally getting to now, but we may have been there 3 or 4 years ago if we had not done that bailout activity. And specifically for Southwest, we were the only major carrier that did not take one of those bailouts, and it goes back to the financial strength. We just didn't need it, where all the other guys needed it just to get by. Yes, sir.
Southwest has always been better managed than United, Delta, or American, period.
No comment. Thank you.
To that point,
I should have brought peanuts.
to that point, can you speak to the SWAT culture for those who aren't local and don't know the core values? Could you just speak briefly on that?
Yeah, the Southwest culture, it's been written about quite a bit. It's a little bit, this is going to sound so simple, but it's a little bit of kind of motherhood and apple pie. So much of it is about the golden rule, doing unto others as you'd have them do unto you, treating people with respect. All of the HR practices, it's just in our DNA, back to the comment I made earlier. It's all about hiring that right person and getting the right person in the door. I would say that Southwest works extremely hard, but also plays extremely hard. Safety is always number one. We don't ever lose sight of safety. But it's amazing, in the 16 years, or going on 16, how many people have come in the doors and they're like, okay, these folks are a little bit different, and they self-eject. They're like, I'm not going to be successful. So the actual culture and the work environment actually takes care of some of that itself. But we really, hire for character and attitude, and then the skills and the training come from there. So it's our on the New York Stock Exchange, our symbol is love. Every logo you see of ours, it's heart. It's very much, even though it's an airline, which is kind of a cutthroat business, it's very much about customers. But we start, so one last nugget here is we literally want to take care of the employees first. And it's a completely different model from a lot of Fortune 500. If you actually take care of the employee well with benefits, the whole package, back to respect and golden rule, then they are going to be motivated to take the best care of your customers, and then the financials come third. And that kind of continuous loop has proven to be very healthy for 41 plus years.
I think you got one last one.
Yes, sir.
Well, can't keep sitting here anymore. Is this a good time to buy Southwest stocks?
Maybe we should talk off camera.
Question, when are you going to fly to Victoria? The only city in Texas, and the oldest city, and yet Southwest doesn't fly in. You do not even one flight. When I go down, I have to go down to Harvey and change to competitors to fly down to Victoria. So last time I saw Herb, and I got peanuts from him, I asked for that, and that hasn't happened yet. Is that on the agenda at all?
No. Sorry to burst the bubble. If you think about our operating model, one of the big fundamental principles there is economies of scale, some sort of scaling in the airport. There's just, if you just look at customer demand, folks that want to start or stop their journey in some of these smaller cities, not picking on Victoria, but just any of the smaller communities, our model is about scaling up and high utilization of our assets and doing that market. I'm just not familiar enough with the specific O&D traffic going into that, in and out of that market. But my guess is it's once a day, twice a day, may not even be daily service. A lot of these small communities are served by other carriers. They just fly it Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and then they'll kind of iterate their planes to a couple different small markets that way. But that is just not a sweet spot for how we do business. So I apologize, but that is not high on the list of new cities. So why don't, and this is great, thank you. Let's keep the dialogue going. I've got just a few other things. Let's talk about a little bit about planning. I'll zip through it because I'm sure there'll be more questions, and then talk a little bit about Love Field. But if you see something, please stop me down, and we'll definitely leave time at the end as well for questions. So, actually, the beauty of all those questions is we hit on a lot of the the principles of what's made Southwest strong. If you think about our strategy and how we were built, it's very different. You see a lot of the legacy carriers. It's very much a hub and spoke model, like across the way here, across the Metroplex over at DFW with American, where they are, they have 800 flights a day, and it's all about bringing every single passenger, whether it's a 50-seater all the way up to large 200-plus seats, into the hub, all this connectivity, large banks, and then flowing that back out. Southwest model has been very different as you kind of read through some of these points. It's all about more point-to-point, looking at very much local demand. Now, we have turned into a little bit more of a hybrid. We have a little bit more connectivity than we have historically. But we always, with the high efficiency of the assets, we were able to go into markets that were overfared or underserved, and the Southwest effect kind of took place. We could go into those routes, and it was coined the Southwest effect back in the 1995 DOT, where when Southwest went into a city or into a route, traffic doubled overnight, and the fares got cut in half. So it was a success for the community. It was a success for all the politicians, and that was a model that made a lot of sense and a lot of money for us. But a lot of competitive advantage to talk to here. So customer advocacy. So the low fares, high frequency, very much trying to focus on customer service and fun. We used to joke about the 3 F's. It's frequency, fares, and fun. Was really the success model. No fees. So we are. Actually, you hear JetBlue. JetBlue is the only other major carrier that does not charge a first bag fee. We don't have bag fees at all. But if you listen to what they're sharing in their latest addresses, it's just a matter of time before JetBlue is going to be charging bag fees. So that's a huge differentiator for us, and we've seen a tremendous in the last 4 or 5 years where airlines have gone crazy with all the change fees and the bag fees. We've seen over 2 points of the entire U.S. marketplace shift to Southwest Airlines. So big differentiator. Gary gets asked on our CEO on almost every earnings call, is that something that Southwest is going to continue to do? And the answer is emphatically, absolutely not. We want folks to understand kind of all in what they get with Southwest. We talked about the frequencies, the fun, low-cost operations. It's back to that efficiency model, really running the assets as hard as we can, creates another position, another prong of this low-cost model. Employee empowerment. We encourage our employees to lean in, do what is right by the customer. You're all smart people, and we don't always get it right. Now with social media, one little thing happens with boarding, or somebody gets yanked off a plane and it goes viral within minutes. So you really have to be delicate with that. But at the end of the day, try to lean in and do the right thing with the customer and try to problem solve. Very repeatable market strategy. That's that underserved, overfared. We could do that over and over and over again. And then a strong balance sheet. We have over $3 billion in cash on hand, the highest credit rating in of all the airlines in the U.S. Not leveraged from a debt position. So all of those things really created this spider web, or this network of competitive advantages that enabled this low-cost position. So if anyone ever asked you, there's a differentiated model, a low-cost model, Southwest absolutely is the low-cost model. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. A lot of challenges. We talked about some of these earlier, so real quickly through this. The industry has changed the last 10 years. Think about all the regulation. Think about the fuel spike. So back 10 years ago, our fuel bill was only 10% of our entire expense. Today, it's a third. It's 33%. So in 10 years, really the way the expenses break down today, it's a third our people, all 46,000, a third our fuel bill, and then a third everything else. So when you see, you're watching TV or reading the Wall Street Journal in the morning, and you see something happening with Brent crude or West Texas Intermediate, and you see those fuel prices spike. Pennies or dollars mean tens, if not hundreds, of millions of dollars in expense to the airlines. When you see that kind of movement, we talked about the economic shocks of the recessions, a lot more regulation. One of Anderson, the CEO of Delta, just came out saying that the government is basically treating the airlines as an ATM. They're slapping fees and extra costs time and time again, and it's something almost shocking. So something like $60 to $70 of every fare you pay is going straight to the government. So as you see, fares continue to rise. That's a big piece of it. Competitive challenges. So you've not only seen all the mergers and acquisitions, a lot of bankruptcies. It's now really down to the big three or big four with Southwest. Between United, Delta, and the New American and Southwest, we carry over 80% of the entire U.S. business place. You also have the emergence of these ultra low-cost competitors. So you look at the Spirits and the Allegiance with their bare bones, very, very low operating cost model. And they are actually, there's a huge debate in the industry, are they actually shifting share to themselves? Are they stimulating? Are they actually attracting a customer that would not have flown otherwise? It's somewhere in the middle. So it's definitely a competitive threat. Unbundling of services. So you're now seeing all this a la carte, where a lot of these airlines have unbundled everything and they upcharge you. I mean, the model is, hey, let's flash a low fare. Consumers have short-term memory loss. We get attracted by a $39 fare, not realizing when we get to the gate or get to the airport and I've got 2 or 3 bags, I'm going to pay more than I actually paid for the fare in bag fees. Or the change fee is so high that when I have to go change my itinerary, I basically just lost the cost of the ticket. I mean, it's not even worth paying the money to change because of the low initial fee. And then we've had internal challenges. We didn't take the bailout. We're the only major airline that's never gone through bankruptcy. So all the other guys, they slucked all kinds of costs on the backs of their employees. So as Southwest has continued to mature and actually, compensate and pay folks well, the other labor costs, that's a huge input cost into the equation for the other guys, has come down. Huge fleets. So just think about how many planes we retire a year and bring in new planes. That's the size of some small airlines, just managing the infrastructure of the airline. So very, very quickly, so we went through a very significant exercise back in 2010, 2011. We have a 5-year strategic planning process. It was, this even predated the decision to go purchase AirTran. We wanted to kick it back into growth mode, and there's a lot of different, product differentiation, you could do a new line of business, you could grow organically, you could actually go purchase somebody else. But it really gave us a chance to examine our strategy, where we compete, how we win, and even looking at we'll look here on the next slide, our purpose and our vision statement. And really now we have anchored all the planning processes and governance we have at Southwest in lockstep with this purpose and vision to make sure we're successful at the end of the day. So this is back to the 2011 timeframe. We really started galvanizing around this purpose and vision statement, but our purpose is about connecting people to what's important in their lives through friendly, reliable, and there's that word again, low cost air travel. And our vision now, as it was late 70s when we started New Orleans, so we kind of moved out of Texas. We were the only Texas carrier. Then it took us all of the 80s and all of the 90s to become a national carrier and have a national network. And here we are now in 2014 starting international service. So now the world is our oyster. So the vision is to become the world's most loved, most flown, and most profitable airline. So that is really what sets everything at Southwest in motion as we look at 2020 and beyond. We've had a lot of the changes. You can see the Southwest of the past and the changes that are happening right now before us. So you can see on the right, in the red up top is really the 5 big strategic initiatives that we've been focused on in this 5-year strategic plan. So of course, AirTran integration, so that's 8,500 employees, 135 planes. They had about 75 locations, so they were 1/5 the size of Southwest. That's a major undertaking. A brand new Rapid Rewards program, doing a huge fleet modernization, bringing in the Dash 800 as we talked about earlier, and then starting to go after a new reservation system with the international capabilities. All of you in different businesses, you have probably some system that is the central nervous system of the entire business. That is the reservation system. Airlines, you can't take anything lightly when you're tinkering or doing a complete overhaul of a reservation system. So that's the one of the 5. It's going to take us still another couple of years from today to get that new reservation system in place. Just a snapshot of a few images. We've talked about all these, so I'll go on. You know, it has been an extremely volatile environment. You see all the airlines, the industry since day one has not made a penny. If you add up all the years that the industry has been in business, and just over this 10, 11 year period, you see all the carriers that went Chapter 7 or Chapter 11, and you've seen all the, as I mentioned earlier, all the consolidation to where we sit today. So, very quickly, you started off in 71, like a lot of companies, you start up and it's absolutely out of a shoebox. You're just doing whatever you can to get by. Really, all the way, you fast forward to 2000 and 2005, you see some of the tools. It really wasn't about project, program, portfolio management at all. It was all Excel spreadsheets, and it was planning at Southwest was more of a financial budgeting and financial planning exercise. And you almost got to a point where we're getting so large, we're having to do big construction projects, we're trying to grow. You had to kind of get your big boy pants on, and it was too unwieldy. You've got to put these PMO practices in place at the corporate level. We've got different functional stacks, and then all the way into the departments. Without it, you don't even have a clue what's going on in the organization. So let's look a little bit about that. We've talked about just the size and the complexity. So just a need for much more cross-functional. Before, the motto was any of the 25 departments, if you just have a continuous improvement mindset and you're doing everything you can for Southwest to be successful, just know that the other 24 groups are doing the same thing. Don't even talk to them, just focus on your business area. Now, any of these enterprise initiatives, you hit all 25 departments with every single thing you do. So having to be much more integrated, much more cross-functional in nature. We used to get by, you see in the bold there, that term annual operating plan, we call it AOP. You basically had a 1 month period in the fall where you crammed everything in and tried to figure out 1 year at a time what you wanted to be next year, how much you wanted to grow, what projects you would do. And we just completely stressed the whole system, so a lot of fire drills, there was no transparency, a lot of duplicate work, a lot of surprises where then projects were completely running over their budgets or taking 2x the amount of time to actually get things done. The picture on the right kind of shows that where it was kind of a mountain, this AOP in the fall. The executives would have a spring retreat and then they would have a fall retreat, but spring retreats thinking deep thoughts and thinking about where we want to go, but it really wasn't putting pencil to paper. Also, very symptomatic, it's probably like a lot of organizations, it was very much bottoms up. So everybody put their idea and their project or what we needed to go do to grow in the hopper, and then it caused potentially infighting and conflict, and there just was not a good way to make decisions, and it wasn't necessarily tied to a purpose or vision statement at all. So we've had to go through significant transformation. So what we have today, you can see a lot of the objectives of why we went down this path. The building blocks on the right, we have a company master plan that is literally at the corporate level. It's refreshed every 2 weeks, and essentially all the spend, all the projects, dependencies, resources, your stop lighting, all of the PMO practices that you put in place in a large organization, it rolls into this master plan, and our executives have a quick snapshot every 2 weeks to see, what kind of risks, what kind of issues, if something's falling behind, how they can help. Then we have this midterm planning exercise. It's now in the spring, where we're basically trying to build out the plan for what the airline's going to look like over the next 3 years, all in. So all the projects, all the business actions, how much growth, what we're doing with our cost plan, labor plans, on down the line. Then we've really invested in functional planning, so you can't, you just don't want to just scratch the surface at the top. You've really got to have the stacks and the departments strong and having the right level of planning there. And then a whole enterprise performance management system around the whole enchilada that's tied to compensation up and down the organization. That, you can ask any leader at Southwest, what are some of the big metrics and how are we tracking? And most all of them can tell you off the top of their head. It's crystal clear what we're trying to accomplish with some of the key objectives. So now that midterm process where we spend a good 2 months in the spring refreshing that midterm plan. So now when we get into this AOP season to really lock down next year's budget, it's much more seamless. So the mountain that was, you see on the left-hand side, that red AOP mountain of the past is much more seamless, where on the bottom right, you see that company master plan and the functional planning is continuous throughout the year, and then you can really kind of balance the resources, and you're just taking bite-sized chunks out of that midterm plan and just really trying to go to the next level of detail when you're making that annual operating plan. So I'm going to stop just for a moment. You guys can read just a few final thoughts as far as how we've invested planning. Any questions about governance, processes, putting in the right level of PMO investment at Southwest? Yes, sir.
You really amazed me when you said you make a change to something, you have to interact with 25 separate departments. What is the key to getting 25 departments to agree on anything, let alone have a coordinated front? I'm very curious.
Yeah, some of it is, I'd say that the two things that jump to mind is it's got to be more top-down. So you only have so many resources, only have so large a budgets. If you think about the three big CapEx spends, capital spends at Southwest, it's airplanes, it's technology projects, and it's airport costs. We're doing a lot of airport building, like what we're about to see here with Love Field. It's got to start top down, and you've got to put, in Southwest, we try not to be over bureaucratic and put too heavy a process in place, but you just have to get the right executives in the room and be frank with each other, transparent. It's built on trust. It's back to the culture question, so they can duke it out in a healthy conflict way and get to the right decisions at the end of the day. If you have that alignment, it's an easy trickle down. So even though you have the 25 departments at the lowest level, they all fit within clean stacks that have kind of more program plans where the project and detailed project work is happening at the department level, and it all flows up into that master plan and the midterm plan at the corporate level.
So in summary, the two keys to your success are staffing and coordination driven by the executive level.
No, yeah, that's a very good description of it. Yes, sir.
And yours is that everybody is following the same set of strategic initiatives.
It is. For folks that are close to it, Gary has said those 5 strategic initiatives publicly. I'm not exact, 100 times publicly. So we're big on, once we make a decision, we stick to the plan. One of the most dangerous things, you guys have probably all heard this, organizations typically don't die of starvation, they die of indigestion. So one of the biggest strategic words you can use is no. So we've decided we're going to go do this, and we're going to go do it well. There's a bunch of other shiny objects over here, but we're not going to distract resources, and you're going to stay the course. So yes, that's it's clear. What are the big rocks that we're trying to accomplish, the big milestones, and there's no mincing that. Yes, okay.
I'd like to go to one of the big misperceptions about Southwest Airlines, and that is you start out saying we work hard, we play hard, and I think most audiences here, we play hard. And the reality is, you guys outwork, out-hustle. Your workday is not, hey, I'm running out the door at 4:30 in the evening. I mean, these major transformations take effort. Maybe you can talk to what's your typical workday and how do you make this happen around the play hard norm?
Yeah. So, yeah, it's good. So the question is about, hey, work hard, play hard. What does a typical work week, typical day look like? And this is actually kind of a generational conversation here. So when you think about when Herb and actually Colleen Barrett, who's famous secretary for all those years, she went on to become the president of Southwest Airlines. It's the highest ranking female in the history of aviation. So they were kind of a tag team. When they stepped down about 13 years ago, they were asked a lot of questions. What is your work day going to look like now? And they said, they weren't blinking an eye at this. They said instead of 7 17-hour work days a week, we're just going to do 5 17-hour work days. And it was a labor of love, and that was their entire career, working those kind of hours. And they use an interesting term. Now, I think a lot of us in here probably dig a better work-life balance. But I mean, they would talk about their job not as a job or a career, but more of a crusade or more of a cause. Giving people the freedom to fly was bigger than just a job. It was letting grandma and grandpa go fly to see their grandkids for the holidays, or the business person to go make that face-to-face deal that they might not have been able to do otherwise. That's why we were so fanatical, so dogmatic about keeping costs low, so we could charge low fares and grow and give America the freedom to fly. So I know it sounds kind of cliche, but that is still a part of the work ethic, the warrior spirit that we have at Southwest today. Now, there's not many people out there working 17-hour workdays, but it's just an understanding that if duty calls and the job calls, you're going to be willing to do whatever it takes to outwork the competition and get the project done or get the planes turned or whatever it may be. Yes, ma'am.
How does the company plan to keep airfare still low? And you've mentioned several times that you're the low fare carrier. In the case of no longer having a fuel hedge and rising competition in international flights and all the other pressures?
It's a great question. Whether you've flown on us or seen anything published, our fares have increased. I mean, the whole industry has increased, and it's a lot of this cost story and a lot of the input costs changing. I will say that our point-to-point or our point-to-point / hybrid model is still miles more efficient than a hub-and-spoke model. So inherently in that core strategy, core model, that's going to generate low cost. And a lot of, even though I was using terms historical with that spider web I showed and how all those core competencies come together, almost all of those things are still in place today. So it goes back to the gentleman's question earlier, what airports are you picking? We're picking airports that are just perfect mold for Southwest going into. It's back to the question on the gauge. We're not doing crazy stuff where we're diversifying our fleet and starting to buy Airbus or buy large planes. We know what works for Southwest. We know what's going to take to keep the costs low and be more and more efficient. And I would say the biggest weapon going forward, because we've been essentially stagnant or flat the last 4 or 5 years as we've been trying to digest AirTran and all that transformation, we are about to go back into growth mode. So growth, if you just look on a unit basis, that actually is very healthy to kind of drive your costs lower. So that was a weapon for Southwest for decades. As we stay flat, your business stays flat, a lot of your costs grow on you, so it's a pinch to profitability. We're now about to start expanding and growing again, which is another big push on driving your unit costs down. Yes, ma'am.
So are you going to grow the XNA in Arkansas? You said overpriced and underserviced, and that is definitely an airport.
Yeah. So it's with my current role. I was just at a conference a month ago. It just happened to be up in Canada. We met with 140 cities in a day and a half. Either they currently have our service or they want our service, and that's a good thing. And they're willing to partner, and they want to figure out ways to give you marketing dollars or mitigate some risks of expense of the operating first 1 to 3 years, and that's great. And so I would just say there are ample opportunities. A lot of those smaller to medium-sized communities. Never say never. Southwest may go there, but I would just say that there are so many more financially and great additions to our overall route network that would be higher in the pecking order before we start looking at some of those small to medium-sized opportunities.
Sir, I have a question.
Yes.
How do you compare yourselves against newest competitors like Spirit Airlines? They have like a $9 fare club. I know they charge customers they charge for luggage, but they keep their airfares always low. So what are you doing to keep up with this kind of competition from Spirit Airlines?
Great question. The airline industry, from a competitive nature, is fierce. And you're seeing it right now with some healthy returns from the airlines. You're seeing all kinds of talk about startup airlines, just in a specific city or on a regional basis. And then there's a little bit of, I'll just call you see a lot of these investors like the Richard Bransons of the world. There's a mystique to it. There's something that's sexy about the airline industry. There's a lot of investors who say the airlines are the worst place. Airlines are the best at destroying value, so don't invest in it. But Spirit specifically asked a question about Spirit Airlines. They have an extremely ultra low cost model, very bare bones, very much unbundled, and they're big on all the upsell. And it is a little bit of a shell game. Most consumers, when you look at all the focus groups and all the market research, the consumer repeat nature of their business is extremely low with Spirit. You talk to a lot of the customers, and they try it one time, and then they say, "Oh, well, I'll never go through that again." I got interrogated at the gate and the small seats and on and on. But it is a very low price point. The Spirit's typical customer only flies once every 3 years, and the thesis there is somebody has that bad experience, but 3 years goes by before they fly again, so they forget how bad that experience was, and they see the $19 fare. Oh, let's go to Vegas for $19. Let's go, and then they repeat and wash, again that whole cycle all over again. They're growing, so they're adding a lot of aircraft. They are doing very much a skimming strategy, so they are looking for very large markets. Say large markets that have over 1,000 passengers in the market a day, and then so there's a lot of demand, and they drop in with a low fare price. I'd say there is some share shift, so there are consumers or customers that are more attracted to Southwest, maybe part of our loyalty program or any of the legacies, and say, hey, that price point's too good to pass up, I'm going to go try it. But most of their traffic, they're actually stimulating customers that either wouldn't have taken that trip otherwise or would have hopped in the car and driven across country. So they are actually growing the overall U.S. marketplace with that model, but you rest assured we've got tons of analysts and a lot of focus on not just Spirit, but all the other airlines. You've got to know what they're up to at all times, so you can make the right planning decision.
Can you talk to your project management office and how it's broken up, versus your operations versus, are they all under one umbrella?
Yeah, so it's a question about how is it structured. So we do have kind of a head of the horse, if you will. So we don't call it this internally, but it's essentially a corporate PMO in our strategic planning group that's really shepherding that every other week master plan and the midterm planning exercise. Partner very closely with our financial planning and analysis shop. All that rolls up to our CFO, is where that lives. And then we have dedicated resources, call them more program level. You see that third bullet point there. So our big stacks are commercial, customer, which they work very closely together, operations, fleet, and labor. So we have dedicated leadership and staff in all of those areas that are tightly coordinating with the master plan and our strategic planning team. And then even below that, you go into a department like ours, network planning and performance, we have a small kind of project office, and everything's mapped out, all the linkage up and down the stack, processes, reporting, how you communicate things, how you raise awareness. So it's not overnight. It's a multi-year effort to put all the building blocks in place, but we're really at a healthy spot, and we can quickly. You always know where you stand. It's very transparent. You always know the risk on the table, what's going on with budgets. So it's been very helpful for us.
You've referenced over here. You've referenced the culture of Southwest a bunch of times. I'm wondering how you've maintained the culture with all of the growth in employees, and especially with the big acquisition, how you've been able to keep that focus.
It's actually been extremely difficult. So if you just think about the United States and think about regionally, we started down in Texas, a little, I'll say Southern hospitality. Folks tend to be a little bit more friendly. You go up to the Northeast, and I'm not taking a shot at Philly or New York or anything like that. You try to hire somebody, and you try to ingrain, this whole, warrior spirit and the golden rule, and this is how you treat your customers. And it's not the same type of training. So there's a lot of not just initial training. We bring everybody. All 46,000 employees have gone through an extensive initial training where it's the history of the company, what we're all about. I'm not going to say we brainwash the employees, but there's so many of these things, these stories that just carry on decade after decade that we really try to promote to try to help infuse that. And then a lot of the groups have very strong recurrent training. Leadership is a key focus area for us. Actually, we were talking with a few folks here before we started, and just mentioning, in most organizations, people, they either come to that organization or that company because of leaders. They follow great leaders, and they leave bad leaders. So, if we don't have good leadership in place, then the whole organization under them is going to be fragile. So it takes that whole ecosystem of training, recurrent training, leadership, and really promoting a lot of our values over and over and over again to make it stick. But it has been challenging along the way. Any other questions before I show yes, sir. And after this question, let's look at Dallas Love Field just very quickly, that project, and then we'll have a few more minutes just to close. Yes, sir.
You indicated that moving into New York and D.C. was a new objective that you recently. What were some of the impediments that you had leading up to that? Was it governance? Was it company strategy?
So, a couple things there. 10 minutes. Thank you. So, we talked. One of the questions earlier was about air traffic control. Well, so air traffic control can be a nightmare up in some of those dense markets. They're slot controlled. They have ground delay programs. There's just so many more layers to operating in some of those environments. And an airline's only making money when that plane's in the sky. Actually, Jim and I were talking about that earlier this afternoon. So if that plane's sitting on the ground and you're stuck on the runway at tarmac, all you're doing is bringing the rest of your operation in a delayed situation, because we run the point-to-point model, such tight turns and all the frequencies. Our aircraft fly more segments, more up and down than anybody else. And if you get delayed 10 minutes or 30 minutes, it's a domino effect across the rest of the organization, or the rest of the business. So we've had to stub our toe a few times going into those markets. We've actually had to invest extra time in our schedules, extra operational investment, just to make those stations work. But at the end of the day, our model, we've seen great success in, I'll throw a few cities out, like a Nashville or a Kansas City or St. Louis or Chicago. You cannot leave that as a gap in your service pattern. You may serve 30 other nonstops out of Chicago, but that business customer, to get their entire share of wallet, they want to go to New York, they want to go to Boston, they want to go to DC. So you cannot leave that void, or they're going to go jump on one of your competitors, and you risk losing that customer. So we've really been focused the last 10 years or so, rounding out portfolios in key cities, and depending on the size of the market, really serving the top 30, 40, 50 routes out of that city, so that it's not only all of their air service, but they have our loyalty card, they have our Chase Rapid Rewards card that they start using for all their purchasing, and it creates, it's not a technical term, but it's more sticky. It makes folks think Southwest first and less about where they want to fly. And we would love, to be frank, we'd love for all of our customers to feel satisfied with the product offering that we give, the value proposition, and they think Southwest first for their purchasing, for their loyalty, and for all their flights. So that's why those key northeast markets have been critical for unlocking value for us. So let's take a quick peek at Love Field. A lot going on. As I mentioned earlier, 2007, finally that 5-party agreement came to some sort of consensus. And what you see here is an artist rendering that was done years ago. I mean, this is a major overhaul to an airport, complete renovation. This is actually what it looks like as of last month. hopefully folks have had a chance. We opened up the new facility, started opening up in waves in April of last year. The whole new facility will be online here in the next 2 months, ahead of October 13th. And as you see in the back, I don't know if I have a laser pointer here, but you see the back, you actually see the 20 gates, 10 on either side. Security's kind of in that neck that runs kind of north-south in that picture. And right now, 16 of the 20 gates are online. We're actually tearing down the old Love Field just in the next week. So if anybody's nostalgia that used to fly Southwest out of that old terminal that had the Chili's down there and had the big L, that is going to be completely demolished here in the next week. So they want to go out there and just see it. But we are so proud, so beautiful. Actually, there's a couple comments from customers. Wow factor. There's one of the comments in here. It was funny, especially after April of last year. You get folks that were flying back into Love Field for the first time, and they were panicky. They were shocked. They thought that they had gotten dropped off at the wrong airport. Because it is so stark. It's so beautiful from its. It was kind of drab, and it was definitely long in the tooth. The old facility. So we couldn't be more thrilled. Huge scope of work. $519 million. Southwest actually fronted half of the money, and then the rest of the debt issued, we actually put our credit behind it to help support the city of Dallas on that almost a 900,000 square foot facility. Actually, I will say one thing. I got to make a quick comment about DFW. Anybody in here that worked directly with DFW? So I'd make a comment anyway, but I just. So, I don't know if folks read it in the papers, it's both in the Dallas and Fort Worth papers on Monday. So they're going through a huge remodeling of all their terminals. It's been there since the mid-70s without a lot of upgrades. So Terminal C, which Americans in, large facility, they just requested an extra $650 million for a scope change. Since 2010. They've had 30 scope changes, and the budget for Terminal C alone is $2.7 billion. And it's a little bit larger facility. It's more than the 20 gates, but it's not much more than the 20 gates. But it really gives you a feel for, there's a lot of times there's a better way to do it. A lot of government entities aren't great at doing massive construction projects like this. So we've been able to find a sweet spot where we partner, and the actual city turns over the actual ownership and project management back to Southwest Airlines. We're doing the exact same thing with the Houston Harvey project. We're also doing the same thing in Fort Lauderdale, and there's a couple other big airport projects that are going to be underway here in the coming years. And we've been able to cut budgets way more than half the timeline. If you saw some of the early budgets for what was being proposed when it was more run by the city, it was just staggering numbers and staggering dates, and we've been able to kind of, it's the whole under budget, under time, so we've been very, very thrilled with that. And we've got great partners. So Corrigan Associates is the lead architect and designer, Hensler Phelps on the construction side, and you saw the facilities. So today we do about that last bullet, 4.2 million in planements. And it's scaled to be able to handle 7 million. Southwest ourselves, we have about 125 flights on the 16 gates. We're going to figure out, it's someone who's wanting to do an operations management project dream. We're going to try to make those gates hum as fast as we possibly can to get as many flights out of Love Field. So much we could go into here. We're not going to have time, but you just think about then all of the commercial planning and the customer planning. What you're looking at is a plot of the zip codes here in Dallas-Fort Worth. And as I mentioned, the two airports are only 18 miles apart. The yellow is the trade zone that's more focused, more naturally you would use Love Field. The blue is DFW. The red is the battleground. And like the Houston Hobby, the Houston airport system, the Chicago, where the airports are farther away, the two airports are less of a substitute project, substitutive as far as making your choice on where you want to fly. Dallas and DFW are actually more unique than a consumer, especially if you live there in that red zone. You have a lot of choice. You can, whether you're trying to get to LaGuardia, you can fly on American out of DFW, you can fly Southwest, and we're both going to have great schedules. So then it's about why your purchase decisions. Why do you pick Southwest? Is it the convenience of the airport? Is it because your loyalty programs with Southwest are American? So the fares are in a great spot to a lot of these highly competitive markets. You also have Virgin entering the fray, kind of walking into a buzzsaw. So a lot of commercial planning going on around that. And it's just interesting, and these snapshots, I know you aren't familiar with all these airport codes, but what you see in the gray is where we currently serve, and the blue bars are a lot of the new markets that we've already announced. But you have seen, and this is across the country, a lot of that short haul business has been eroding. The quick stat that blows my mind is if you just think over the last 20 years, how much growth has been in the city of Dallas and the city of Houston. Those economies are booming, the populations are booming. Well, air service between those two cities has been cut in half the last 20 years. So while Texas economy and those two huge top 10 cities in the country have been going like gangbusters, air service, and it's security, it's fares, price elasticity of demand. There's all kinds of dynamics at play. But clearly, consumers are voting with their wallets. This is coming, repeal of the Ride Amendment and us flying these longer haul flights is coming at a perfect time for starting to transition our business here in Dallas. We, on October 13th, we get to start 7 new nonstops. We have on just 2 weeks later, on November 2nd, another 8 nonstops come online. The ones in gray, the yellow stations that you see up there are on October 13th. Southwest, talking about playing hard, working hard, that Wednesday, so October 13th is a Monday. Wednesday is going to be the largest celebration, the largest party in the history of Southwest Airlines. They're expecting between 12 to 15,000 people for this party. It's going to be unbelievable. We actually did just announce 2 more nonstops that start in January, so we're going to be going head-to-head with Virgin in the Bay. So we're starting San Francisco and Oakland in January. So a lot of achievements. I'll stop because I know we're very short on time, but you can read through some of the things there. And let me just, Jim, you tell me, how much time do we have for a couple more questions?
2 minutes.
2 minutes. Two quick questions. What? Yes, sir.
I think that Dark is building a line on CFW.
They are. So there's a lot there, but the short of it is there actually is a line that goes right by Love Field. There was a ton of planning and debate and cost studies. There was a proposal to actually run that line straight through the airport, and it was cost prohibitive. So it runs parallel with the runways, and it's an easy. But it's one more step for the consumer. This is a choice the consumers have to make. They run kind of dark buses every 10 minutes from that key spot over to the airport. So it's there today. It's not that bad, but it's just so much more convenient if you took that one more step and ran it right into the heart of the airport. But yeah, there is going to be the line that's going to come online at DFW and kind of hook up with that with their DFW link that kind of connects all the different terminals. Last question. Yes, sir. In blue.
I'm just curious to talk about the drop in air travel between Houston and Dallas. The overall domestic market is such a current focus. Has there been an overall drop in domestic travel in spite of population growth just due to the increase in telecommunication connectivity, your video conferencing, your Skyping, telecommunication connectivity? People have to get on a plane to see each other face to face.
Whether it's telecommunications, whether you hear it comes up every few years about high-speed rail. There's a whole litany of things that are truly competitors to the airline industry. All that said, and that's all risk, and we have to plan for it. The overall U.S. domestic demand is growing 2 to 3% every year, even with the short-haul traffic coming down, which that's a market that's probably affected more by all the new technology advancements. You've seen medium haul and long haul really growing. Because if you have to get in a car and drive 6 hours, that's just a headache. If you have the ability to, a lot of folks would rather just jump on a plane and just get there faster. But that's a great point. That's definitely part of our future planning and kind of risk mitigation. And you've seen a huge shift in our portfolio to more of the medium haul, long haul markets to coincide with that. Just want to say thank you. This is a great conversation. Thank you for all the wonderful questions. I'll be around for a few more minutes. If I apologize if I didn't get to your question. And again, thank you, Jim.
That's got to be one of the most incredible business stories you're ever going to hear. I was flying Southwest in the early 70s, and you couldn't have gotten any odds at all that they would succeed. That's just the way it was. And who are these people? Get those planes out of the sky. They said, no, we're not going, we're not going, we're not going. And they persisted, and they overcame an unbelievable amount of adversity. Everybody fighting, the government fighting them, the congressman fighting them, and whatever. Don't make a change in these are glasses, they don't leak. I would recommend that you not wine to soothe your nerves, but champagne to sell them.